guys, I'm Aesa and welcome to my League of Legends champion guide on Lulu, the Fae Sorceress. Lulu was originally intended to be a support champion, but I find her much more fun to play as an AP carry, which is what this guide will be focusing on. Lulu is an immensely powerful carry with arguably one of the best early harass combos in the game, and the unique ability to control a team fight from start to finish. I'll begin with an overview of Lulu's abilities. Lulu's passive is all about her incredibly irritating pixie picks. For every one of Lulu's auto attacks, except on turrets, sad face, Pix will shoot 3 missiles at whatever Lulu had targeted. The damage of these attacks only scale with level, and can be intercepted by minions or champions that walk in front of them. Try your best not to lean too heavily on the extra attacks when you're last hitting, as they're slow to activate and quite often will fail to finish off a minion, probably resulting in a lost CS. Lulu's passive is great for doing a little bit of extra harass early game, and provides a sort of filler when all of your spells are on cooldown in teamfights. Lulu's Q is Glitter Lance, AP Lulu's meatiest ability, doing a decent amount of damage and dramatically slowing everything it hits. Usually I will learn and max this spell first. When cast, Pix and Lulu will both fire a missile in a different direction depending on the location of your cursor. The skill shot arrow for this ability will enable you to shoot Glitter Lance at all kinds of crazy angles, making it a very flexible and relatively easy to use skill shot. The effectiveness of Q takes a huge leap once you level E, your shielding / mini nuking ability, but more on that later. Lulu's W, Whimsy, is arguably her signature move, transforming enemies into adorable kitties or granting Lulu or one of her allies a movement speed / AP buff. As this is more of a utility spell than any other of Lulu's abilities, I'll max this last. Casting Whimsy on yourself will allow you to get around the map relatively quickly and help you get your teammates out of danger. However, in teamfight situations, it's almost always better to use W for its polymorphing ability to lock down high-value enemy champions. The AP boost from the self-cast is nice for lane phase nuking, but in the current state of the game, the more CC your team has in group skirmishes, the better. Help Pix, Lulu's E, is a solid and flexible spell on its own, either doing damage and providing sight of an enemy, or shielding one of your allies. Pix will move and stick to whatever target you cast this on, friend or foe, for the duration of the ability, and that's where the fun really begins. Bouncing Q off Pix's various locations can be used to harass the ever-living crap out of your laning opponent, slow enemies down to set up ganks, chase down fleeing enemies, and save low-health teammates that are being pursued. Wild Growth, Lulu's ult, is immensely useful as both an offensive and defensive cooldown. It can only be cast on allied champions and Lulu herself, granting them bonus health, a brief slowing aura, and knocking up all enemies around them. Early on, it can be used effectively to prevent and even turn around ganks and tower dives, working as both a quick disable and as an emergency heal. It can also be used to facilitate an easy gank if cast on your jungler, throwing up the enemy champion to give you extra time to kill them before they can retreat. Late game, it's fantastic to use on your initiator, peeling all enemies off of them and giving the rest of your team time to move in on their designated targets, and again, can be used to heal friendly champions in bad situations. As Lulu is a new champion, her item build is a bit up in the air, so feel free to experiment. In a few games, I've gotten a Rod of Ages, as Lulu's E and W have relatively short ranges and can potentially get her in the middle of a lot of action in a team fight. Other times I've skipped it, favoring buying a couple of Doran's rings first, then a WoTA and a Deathcap. You have to keep your team composition in mind when deciding whether or not to build as a glass cannon. As for boots, I really favor Ionians to encourage as much ability spamming as possible. As for right now, for Lulu's runes, I've been using Magic Pen Marks, AP Quints, Mana Regen Seals, and Magic Resist Glyphs, and choose a relatively standard offensive mastery build. Now we'll briefly look at different stages in a typical game, and how you can be an effective Lulu in each. Assuming you're playing draft pick, you can play mid or top, but pay close attention to who you might be laning against in champion select. Champions with long range, Xerath, I'm looking at you, can be a hard counter to you in mid, as can champions with persistent gap closers. Once someone gets inside Lulu's personal bubble, it's very hard to get them out, especially early on. Lulu excels when she is able to keep enemy champions harassed and at a distance. Early in lane phase, especially once you have both your Q and E, Lulu is a fantastic harasser, provided you can hit skill shots reasonably well. You can stick Pix on one of your pushed minions and bounce Q off of it to the enemy champion you're against without being anywhere near them. These Q shots are very hard for the enemy to predict, given all the different angles you can shoot at, and can allow you to dominate the lane from very early on. I do have to caution against the overuse of your QE combo, because it will kill your mana pool, and the bolts will decimate a minion wave and may cause you to overextend. As a side note, it can be fun to polymorph enemy champions under their tower to let the tower gobble out their last hits, but it's risky, so remember your personal bubble. Also, if you're mid, try and ward whichever lane bush your blue buff is closest to. Your jungler should be giving you blue as much as possible, and it helps to know if any enemy champions are following you as you leave the lane, and alerts your team if any enemies are trying to steal the buff altogether. Throughout lane phase, your job as Lulu is to keep your opponent low and out of lane as much as possible. Mid and late game means it's team fight time, and believe me when I say Lulu may have overtaken Teemo for having the most powerful global taunt in the game. I'll honestly say this point of the game is where Lulu provides as much utility to her team as she does damage, similar to that of a Lux playing mid. While Lulu does have the potential to initiate with a long-range Q to slow down an out-of-place enemy, it's much more common for a tanky champion to dive into the thick of things to start off the fight. Slap your ult on the tank as we discussed earlier, polymorph the most obnoxious target in the group, throw your Q to slow and damage as many enemies as possible, and E the target everyone is focusing on. Rinse and repeat until people start to run. If you're the ones retreating, I find it extremely helpful to shield whoever is lagging the farthest behind and is in the most danger of getting killed, and bounce a Q off of them to slow down pursuers. If you're chasing stragglers, speed buff whoever is closest to the enemy champions with your E, shield them, and then bounce a Q off of them to slow down whichever unfortunate soul you manage to catch. Lulu's passive extra attacks come in pretty good handy when it comes to mowing down towers and inhibitors, and don't forget, you can bounce your Q off of enemy minions if your enemies are trying to hover around their nexus towers or spawn point. Keep at it and you'll be seeing that victory screen in no time. Whether or not you want to fill everyone's speakers with victory/laugh span at the end of the game is totally up to you. For more information on my masteries, summoner spells, and runes, make sure you check out the video description below. If you enjoyed this guide and found it helpful, please feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more fun and exciting LoL content. Also, feel free to let me know in the comments what your thoughts on Lulu are, and let me know what champion you'd like to see a guide done of on next. Thanks for watching everyone, and